Hey friends, it's SGT here. I'm really happy to have on the phone Chris Duane of Don't Tread on Me. Chris, we have very important issues to talk about, and I want to welcome you back.
Thank you very much for having me back. I'm glad that we're able to make time.
Me too, and you've got a really important article that you're releasing today on 9/11, and I wanted to really support that effort at you exposing some very critical questions and some truth, shedding some light on the most important event that's happened in really maybe world history. So Chris, before we get started, tell us the name of your new article.
The article is going to be on don't-tread-on.me. Here, even I mess it up. And the article is called A Decade of Denial and Deception. And it's basically based around all the evidence that I've compiled about 9/11. But the article is really about, how people are in denial about this very important issue.
I want to start out for folks with just a quick quote from Woodrow Wilson, who said, and I quote, "Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confided to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the fields of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it." And I think that quote, Chris, is apropos as we begin this discussion of 9/11.
Well, especially because Woodrow Wilson was the president that signed in the Federal Reserve. And that's where all of our evils come and start from, is our privately owned, foreign-owned Federal Reserve Bank. Without that, you could not have all these wars, you could not have all this debt, you could not have all this media control, you cannot have all this corporate power. It is the monopoly of money, and the monopoly of money controls the world. So I try to expose a lot of this in my Sons of Liberty Academy, but today I really want to discuss 9/11 because this is the 10-year anniversary of, one of the most biggest crimes of the century. And we have discussed before. I wrote this article called "A Decade of Denial and Deception" to try to get people to really look at this issue one more time. I feel that a lot of the information that was put out on 9/11 really tried to scream at you that 9/11 was an inside job, and that tended to bring forward emotional thought into this. And I think what was missing out of this is the logical thought, at least from the publicity standpoint. I mean, there's a ton of research in there, and I mean, we have architects and engineers against, for 9/11. All these brilliant professors who've done all the research and stuff like that. So, I mean, the empirical evidence is there.
Let's name some of those just so the audience knows. David Ray Griffin, Dr. Stephen Jones, you've got Richard Gage at Architects for 9/11 Truth, Bob Bowman, former head of Star Wars program, really great, insightful, intelligent people saying, folks, take another look at what happened on 9/11, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So the big problem, the big disconnect is those that see it understand what's going on. And we're trying to communicate this information to 90% of America who are living in denial. And I wrote this article called The 5 Stages of Awakening, talking about how people become awakened to a new paradigm, a new truth, a new reality. The basic pattern follows the same process that one deals with in death and dying. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross wrote The 5 Stages of Grief. And our society is in denial right now. They're in denial about the amount of debt we have. They're in denial about the wars that we have. They're in denial about the poor education, the obesity, the antidepressants, all the problems that America is facing. We're in denial about, and most importantly, we're in denial about 9/11. Okay, and the people that did understand what is going on were in the second and third phase of the awareness, which is the anger phase, when they found out, wow, 9/11 was an inside job, and I'm mad, against these people who did do this, committed this crime, and led us off into wars that destroyed our Constitution and brought upon this generational debt. Then there's the bargaining phase, all the people who are ringing the Paul Revere, 9/11 was an inside job. But those two categories are really not the best people to be proponents of the 9/11 truth movement, because they're both relying upon and acting upon an emotional feeling that they have. The fourth stage is depression, which I think is where a lot of people in the truth movement end up. They stop there. They say, this is too big, this is too much of a problem, no one gets it, oh well. The final stage of the awakening is people who are in the acceptance phase. And that's really where you can now step back and really teach from a position of knowledge and awareness and understanding, and get people to think not on an emotional gut reaction, but on a logical thought process. And we were discussing earlier, Sean, the biggest problem I see is not the amount of evidence out there. There's a ton of research of great people that did it. The problem is that Americans don't know how to think. We've been told what to think, but not how to think. And if you look at our educational system, it revolves around an input-output process. Your success in school depends on how efficiently or how quick you can repeat what the teacher tells you onto a test. Input-output. You blindly do whatever the teacher tells you. You don't question authority. You don't question what you're told, how you're taught, and your process. If you're able to process that and fit within that paradigm, you're considered a good student. You're smart. You're able to do things. And yet all that is thorough indoctrination, because that input-output process is the exact same process that a computer or a slave would have. And then our education system is really based on slavery, and unless we are told from an authority that something is real, we tend not to even think about it because we don't even have the understanding to do that.
Well,
there is a way out.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I find this really a fascinating conversation because I agree with you, and we discussed a little bit offline here that we have both found that this issue, this 9/11 false flag issue, is very similar to the gold and silver fiat monetary system Federal Reserve issue. In trying to educate people, you hit that same wall of, I wouldn't even describe it as
dissidence.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's cognitive dissonance. They think that it couldn't possibly be true. And I want to mention a great quote you have in your piece from Charles Mackay. Quote, "It is said that men go mad in herds and only come to their senses slowly and one by one." And, Chris, I found that to be true. I found that you can't wake people up. You can only urge them to try to wake up, but they have to want to wake up themselves.
Mm-hmm. It's like dealing with an alcoholic. I come from an Irish Catholic family, so we've had alcoholics in the past, and people won't sober up until they either hit rock bottom or they come face to face with the consequences of their actions. America has not hit rock bottom, and we have not come face to face with the consequences of our actions. I normally try to tell people who will get involved in this not to proselytize and try to shake people out of their slumber. Your mission really is to be there for when they do wake up. The same issue that we're talking about with the dollar and 9/11. A good teacher, a good person is going to be there to, give them advice and let them know that you care about them and that you're doing this for them. I mean, it really doesn't benefit you that somebody else understands how, gold and silver work. It's not going to make you any more money or wealthier or anything, or understanding 9/11. At the end of the day, it's really about them waking up. Because if you're able to think logically, and that's the process that's missing. A classical education revolves around grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And that was taught in schools before this centralized education system that John D. Rockefeller put together. And grammar, logic, and rhetoric simply came down to grammar was the observation of symbols, letters, or situations. Logic was the ability to understand what that observation was, what the most likely outcome is, and being able to position yourself for it. And rhetoric was the ability of, explaining what you saw, what you think is going to happen, and how you're going to do that. That middle part, that logic, is totally devoid in our educational system. All we have is the input-output. And the logic, that middle part, being able to question authority, question the reality, question what's going on, that is your freedom. That's how you become unslaved. That's how you become free. That's how you do things for the betterment of yourself. And this input-output slave mentality only benefits a collectivist system that needs the masses to blindly follow us into war, blindly accept their money, blindly accept their power. And it's when people start thinking logically of understanding what really happened that they can become free. So to me, 9/11 is a huge crime, but to me it's a footnote, and it's not the big problem. I want people to look into 9/11 not because of the crime that happened, but because those people are still in power. I'm putting together this program called The Greatest Truth Never Told. The greatest truth never told is that all of humanity has been enslaved by this tiny group of people over and over again throughout history. Yeah. And they can only enslave us if they control our minds. If we think like slaves, we act like slaves, and we're easily led about by people who do think logically, and are able to put together crimes like 9/11 or the Federal Reserve to lead us into slavery.
Chris, I'm sitting here nodding because I feel like we're kindred spirits, and it is amazing to me that you somehow went down a path that led you to do what you're doing. I went down a path that was, I think, parallel to yours in many ways and has led me to do what I'm doing. And the purpose of this conversation is just to share this information with those with the open minds and the open hearts to hear it, and for those that want to embrace their own personal sovereignty. And to your point, the only way that you can do that is if you're willing to critically think and challenge this system, which is a tyrannical system and a system that's turned its back on the common man. So I would really appreciate your article.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, all the work that I try to do is really to help people, take what's theirs. I mean, I look at our society. I mean, people kind of are afraid, about the dollar collapsing. And while it is a scary event, just like 9/11 is a scary event, I relate it to a horror movie. The first time you see a horror movie, it scares you, not because of the screaming, the blood, the axe murderer guy. It's because of the fear of the unknown, not knowing what's going to happen, not knowing when that bad guy's going to jump out of the closet and scare you. That's what you fear. And if you watch that same movie over and over again, you become less fearful because you know what's going to happen, right? And if you watch the behind the scenes, maybe the director and the bad guy joking around, and you see how fake the blood is, and that they're a bunch of goofy, dorky kids putting these movies together.
Sure.
It almost becomes laughable.
Sure. Well, just like the Wizard of Oz. I mean, the great and powerful Oz is a frail, sick, disgusting old man. So. And
that power, being able to understand how the world works, and understanding that 9/11 was an inside job, and that these people do exist, and they've been doing it over and over again, and that their playbook is tired and old, and it's almost predictable, then the world becomes a lot less scary. You're not afraid of a dollar collapse because, quite honestly, what in this paradigm are we holding on to? Do we like having 6 wars? Do we like having trillions of dollars worth of generational debt? Do we like having our jobs shipped overseas? Half of America obese, 27 million people on antidepressants? I say let it go. There isn't anything to hold on to.
Yeah, no, you're right. And Mike Krieger wrote an article in which he said the same thing. We know their playbook. It's a tired playbook. They gain power through crisis, and it just doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work as well as it used to work, and it certainly doesn't work as well as it worked on 9/11 because humanity is waking up. And thank God for that, because you're right. This is a tired system.
And they're fearful of that. They're fearful of that.
Well, they ought to be, because humanity has power. Humanity has grace. Humanity can, we can become a level 1 and a level 2 society. We can go to the stars. We just need to throw off these chains.
Yep. I mean, think about how much wealth has been wasted on these senseless wars. I write in this article that we're told that our enemies, whatever they may be, there's always that implication that they're subhuman or evil, or that they're evil people, and that we have to kill them. And I mean, that's a form of racism. I look at it as, I've been all over the world. I've met people, being in the Marine Corps and traveling all over the place, I've met people all over the world. And if I were to divide people, I wouldn't do it by race, creed, nationality, race, what team that they root for. I would view the world in two different ways. There's people who want to be left alone, and people who won't leave you alone. Okay? Most of humanity wants to do what they want to do, love who they want to love, and be left alone. Then there's this small fraction of social predators who are screwed up in the head, and that they want to control not only you, but they want to control the world and the world's resources, and that they rise to the highest, these highest powers, and that these same psychopaths, because if you look at them, they're clinically psychopathic. They are social predators on our society. And I think that if society can learn one thing, just be able to spot the 14 signs of a psychopath and stay away from them and shun them and keep them from power, that to me would be the most biggest blessing upon humanity. I think our founding fathers did a great job of dividing powers what best as they could, and they did it because they knew that power. You always heard that quote from Lord Acton: "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." I would disagree with that. I would say that power attracts the corrupt. It's not that power itself is corrupt, makes you corrupt. It's that the corrupt seek power. Because we've had presidents. We had George Washington stepping down from presidents. All the founding fathers stepped down. They had unlimited power. They could have done wherever they wanted. They could have created another aristocracy, but they didn't. So it's not that power corrupts. It's that the centralized power that we consistently are moving towards attracts these psychopaths who want to control the world.
Chris, I mean, it's well said. It couldn't be better said, in fact, and I encourage everybody to check out your new article. I have the link below. Is there any final thoughts you want to leave with us as we recognize the 10th anniversary of the false flag 9/11, which really changed the world in which we live, as humanity tries to figure out how to move forward over the next decade? Any words of wisdom for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that becoming independent souls and logically thinking for yourself. Humanity can and do so much better than what we've done, and I really believe that the collapse of the dollar will be marked as such. It will be the largest single event in all of human history because it will affect every single human, and it'll be so large an event. I think future generations will view it the same way that we view BC and AD. Because once the dollar collapses, the centralized power that has dominated us, this tiny group of people who have constantly dominated us, will no longer have the tools to constantly control us. And I think now humanity is ready with the ability of the internet and all this thought that we were able to put all this information together. We can have a wonderful life if we can just throw this off and come to terms with reality.
Absolutely. Well, Chris Duane, a.k.a. Silver Shield from Don'tTreadOn.me, thank you for everything that you're doing to enlighten humanity and to raise us all up. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sean. It was great to be here again.
Okay, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, take care.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.